Good evening and welcome to The Square. Tonight's show will focus on the diaspora communities abroad. We're going to be asking ourselves questions such as to return home or stay abroad or even do both. In general, we'll be looking at the role of the diaspora communities in developing Rwanda. My name is Dana Mpisi, I'm the host of The Square. And joining us tonight, we have guests from the diaspora, we have guests formerly from the diaspora, and I'll start with you on my left, Louis-Antoine Muhire is the CEO of Rwanda Cooperation Initiative. It's your second time on The Square. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Great. You're a former diaspora...
Absolutely, 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
Yeah.
And on my right, I am joined by Nyanja Brodin. I hope I pronounced it correctly.
You did.
And she is the founder of Little Hills. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Oh, thank you for having me here.
Great to have you here. As always, The Square is made up of resident panelists. I'm going to start with my right. Charlie Haba, always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Dana, how are you?
Good.
Good.
And welcome back, Brenda Namata.
Thank you.
Left us, I think you've taken a rest from work and you had a restful vacation.
I did.
Great to have you back. So we're going to kick off the show as we usually do with the midweek highlights. Highlights of the week so far. I'll start with you. You were not with us last week. What are some highlights you brought from the country you visited?
From her sabbatical.
No. I would like to share today's highlight for me, which was the absurd incident in the Kenyan parliament, where a female member of parliament had to be kind of thrown out, really, because she was breastfeeding. And I think it's tragic, actually, that we still have workplaces that do not accommodate the needs of women, despite their contribution. Women are very selfless. And like she said, I didn't know what to do. I had an emergency, so I had to come in with my baby. That is selflessness, her dedication to public service. And then you have these men who are just saying, oh, no, you can't do it. So for me, it was really, really upsetting.
The patriarchy is alive and well.
Yes, but the problem is, that's just one case. But there are many women today who are still struggling with the choice of, if I'm pregnant, if I have my baby, they can't have a career. And it doesn't cost much. Sometimes it's as simple as creating a feeding room, at no extra cost. So for me, today I looked at that and I just can't believe that, And I mean, this is Kenya. Kenya is East Africa's economic giant. You would expect that some things they can afford to do at no cost. But still, so hugely disappointed, quite absurd. And I hope Rwanda can be different. We should have, feeding rooms across.
I hope people are listening. Charles, quick.
Yes, Rwanda is known for very many unique things, and we have our own style of doing our things, So one of the things that struck me this week is made in Rwanda. Forget about the clothing that we wear, the juice, all these things that are made in Rwanda. But there's one particular thing that you probably only find in Rwanda. Yesterday was the 6th of August. The National Electoral Commission released an announcement that people have today and tomorrow, 2 days, to submit their candidacy if they're interested in being, in effect, we are looking for the next mayor of Kigali. So if you want to be on the advisory council of Kigali and potentially be the next mayor of Kigali, you have 2 days.
2 days?
To make up your mind.
No, I'm sure there was another.
Is it deliberate or?
No, the announcement was out yesterday on the 6th of August. And it's all over their social media platforms, all over the social media platforms of National Electoral Commission, that it takes 48 hours, if you please, because by the time it was out on their platforms, it was late in the evening and some people had already closed their offices. So in a space of 48 hours, we should have identified and found and, I think this is only made in Rwanda. That's my point.
Well, on a lighter note, Made in Rwanda, we're deliberate on The Square about promoting Made in Rwanda. What are you wearing?
Oh, mine is Uzi Collections.
What are you wearing?
Motions.
Yes, I can tell.
Yeah.
You jump.
I'll jump in.
Uzi, as always, yeah.
Next time we have you on the show, I'll give you a heads up.
No, you're drinking made in Rwanda.
Bourbon coffee.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So to start with, we'll just talk about returning home, right? And I'll start with you, Muhire. If I want us to just to kick off with your individual stories about your life in the diaspora, what made you return home, and what is it that you're doing back home. Now you have returned home. You will get to you because I know you're back and forth between here and Sweden. So if you could just share with us, your inspiration to come back home, and what is it that made you decide to come home and what you're doing?
Well, actually, it wasn't planned when I decided to come back. I've been living outside of Rwanda for 20 years. Of course, I left Rwanda when the genocide against Tutsi was happening. And then I was tired of hearing a lot of stories about Rwanda. Some people tell me Rwanda is doing well, others will say it's a dictatorship. And somehow you get enough of that confusion. And I wanted to come and see and get my own version of what was happening in Rwanda. So I came for a 2 weeks visit. And what I saw struck me so much that I decided to absolutely go back, quit. Literally in 1 month, I left Rwanda. It was the 1st of August, and the 3rd of September 2014, I was back 1 month later. So I didn't even get time to sell my stuff there. I was like, I have to be part of this story of Rwanda. And 3 things actually really struck me. One was the stability in terms of reconciliation. When I left, I was 12 years old, so now you know my age.
I'm not bad at math, so...
okay, 25 later, so... okay, now, when I left at 12, you are old enough to see that and understand what's happening around. And it took me actually 10 years to manage what I've seen in a couple of weeks. Then, what I saw when I came back, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that Rwandans can work together, build beautiful stuff together. That's one. Secondly, also, it's the stability, the peace. You go out in a nightclub at night, you can go to an ATM, withdraw money, you don't feel to be hijacked on a traffic light. Those are things because in Canada, I used to work in Montreal Police, so I had the data about how secure, or let's say insecure Montreal was. We had about 2 or 3 gunshots a day.
Wow.
In Montreal, and at night, it's not really advised to go to an ATM in certain neighborhood. So when I came here, I tested all those stuff, and I was like, wow, it can't be real. So, and then the third thing also is the fact Rwandans were so empowered to start finding solution in their own value and culture. That's what's like most of the time on Africans' economy or society, where we always tend to go look for solution abroad and then try to impose those solutions to us. But in Rwanda, most of the development is based on our value and culture. So those 3 things convinced me to go back and tell my boss I'm gone, and and leave my stuff to friends and tell them you pay me later. And 4 years. Sorry?
That was, I mean, it was quick.
Absolutely, it was shocking. Even my family were like, you must have found a beautiful lady there. I'm like, 4 years later, I haven't found out yet. So it was that different in a positive way. Of course, that made me say, you know what, I want to be part of this chapter and be remembered as a generation who really revived this nation. Yeah.
Oh. Fantastic.
We'll come up to what it is you're doing in Rwanda.
Yeah.
You're between Rwanda and Sweden.
Yep, I am.
For I don't know how many years. So you're not diaspora. You are diaspora, but
am.
you're also Rwanda.
Yes,
so
I am.
how do you do that? How do you navigate that, doing that between family, career, and and just you?
Well, I think what he's saying is right. When you come, especially for me who's been coming back and forth, you see...
For how long, if you can just...
11 years, 12 years now?
Back and forth.
Back and forth. And you see the development of the country. You see the change. And I think some people just see the outside change, but there's people change. So for me, I know people since 11 years ago. And when you come back, you see their life improve. You see their life improve. And then I guess for me it was important to say, how can I contribute? And how is their life not improving? And that I think was more on the healthcare sector and the education sector. And in the end, I chose healthcare because my husband is a doctor. And so it's really easy to come back because we know what we have out there. And it's easy to say, oh, we have everything we need. But we actually don't, because if we have certain things that we can bring back for our family members here, I have family members. So for me, it's more of an investment in my family by coming back, because instead of just continually sending things to them, I should bring things to them and make sure that I'm helping improve the country. And so if you come to Rwanda year after year, you see the improvement. And then I think it gives you that energy to say, you know, I want to be a part of that. And so for me, I try to focus on that. And of course, I'm very, very fortunate because I have a very supportive partner who stays behind sometimes with the kids.
That's what I was going to ask, like the back and forth. How do you do it? Are you always here with your family? Or do you sometimes come home?
I have 3 kids. So when they were younger, I nursed them. I traveled. And so I usually take the youngest baby. The other ones are now in school, so it's difficult to travel with them whenever I feel like it. But I try to make sure I bring my kids back as much as possible, because that's a way of exposing them to their country and their culture. And so when they're young enough, I travel with them. And then when they're a little bit older, I leave them at home.
That's very interesting. Do you want to weigh in before we go into what it is that they're doing and the inspiration behind doing what you're doing in Rwanda, whether it's between Sweden and Rwanda and whether it's in Rwanda?
I think it's interesting listening to their stories. The fact that, you know, you come here, you look at what's happening, you're impressed, and you come back. Now, I know many people who do that, but they haven't really come back like to settle or do things. And I think that's where the question is. Why do we have those that come regularly and they perhaps haven't considered staying? Or even when they leave, it just stops there, like it's just them and family. So I think what has to, one has to sort of look at carefully is how do we get more Rwandans to come back, but even when they leave, still be part of this whole process, which is, I think, a key element in terms of diaspora engagement. Now, we've seen over the years, of course, with Rwanda Day, a key government initiative in terms of mobilizing the diaspora. And we've seen lots of associations across different continents. And from my personal experience, when you speak to Africans from different countries, most of them will tell you they admire the Rwandan diaspora because they feel they are more patriotic and they are more positive about what's happening at home, which is in contrast, for instance, in East Africa, if you take, you find that most East Africans, Rwandans are more patriotic and happy and proud about their country in comparison to the other countries. And I think which speaks to the progress that they are talking about. It's one thing to watch the news, but you go home, you talk to your family members, and you can see really,
the changes.
Yes, that is happening. But I think we are now at that point, it's 25 years, we have to see more, diaspora engagement. And I think part of the conversation that has to happen is around mobilizing investment. We already see that remittances are a big component of our balance payment. But beyond that, I've seen with Rwanda today, when the Rwanda Day happens, you have a few banks, private sector on board. But I think beyond that, one, initiatives like having funding for diaspora projects, if you're interested, and then having a permanent link like we have with local. I mean, RDB has this initiative where they link local and foreign investors. I think we need a dedicated fund that's allows Rwandans in Rwanda to be linked directly with the diaspora, you know, where they can exchange ideas.
Yeah. That's an interesting concept, Charles.
I want to take it on from Bana on the link, and indeed the government of Rwanda does a fabulous job in terms of mobilization. So in addition to the Rwanda Day that is not as regular, I think, as they would have preferred it to be. Initially the idea was it should be an annual event. It's not as regular as that anymore, but there are other initiatives. It's not that when that doesn't happen, there's nothing that happens. So you have come and see, you have diaspora who come and they go for these toreros, you have all sorts of events that are always happening. So of course the big one is Rwanda Day. But I think there is a particular opportunity that we have with the Rwandan diaspora, and sometimes when people are out there saying go back home, because sometimes, quite often, you'll have staff at the embassy or ambassadors, or when you go out there and the message is go back home. It's I have a particular problem with that. Or when are you going back home? You know? We miss out on certain things, and I'll point out three. One is the remittances that you're talking about. People don't realize that there is actually a significant number of Rwandese who survive on remittances. But forget even about Rwandese, the economy itself, you know, when you have hundreds of millions of dollars coming in foreign remittances, and you can imagine what that does to the financial sector. I'll talk about real estate, which is my personal business. We never miss going out to Rwanda days. As a matter of fact, even at this German, the one in Bonn in a few weeks' time, we have taken it a notch higher, and we will have a dedicated property exhibition on the eve of Rwanda Day, and follow that out with a roadshow to UK. The diaspora is a very big component towards our property sales and investments, because you find that even the people who do odd jobs are looking at owning a property back home. So that's number two on that. But the third one also is around exposure. I was having a discussion with one of our very senior members of society 2 days ago on Monday, and he told me that one of the problems that we are facing as the Rwandan employment circles, and whether employment as an employer or employment as an employee, is that we have very limited competition. So we don't have very stiff competition. So the direct impact of that, it is very easy to go into a comfort zone and say, I am Blue Oceans, for argument's sake. Yeah. In this space of producing shows like The Square, there are not 5 other Blue Oceans. And you'll slip into a comfort zone and relax. People who have been exposed from the Rwandan diaspora, because out there it can be a bit fierce, it can be very fierce competition. So if you come with a laid-back attitude from diaspora, you will just be like any other person. But if you come with the diaspora attitude, let me put it that way, that's where you create a mark. And I want to give an example of 2 ladies who have a retail outlet, Uzuri KY at Kigali Heights. And these 2 ladies, I remember when they were starting out, and the urge they had to push themselves to take it to a notch higher. And they have a bigger store, they're online, they're manufacturing, and that tells you a lot about what exposure can bring to somebody. It can bring out the best out of somebody. Yes.
Yeah, and just briefly, I think Rwanda also has an opportunity in terms of competitiveness to not just target the Rwandan diaspora, but the African diaspora, because when you engage with the diaspora across board, you find that most African diaspora are very proud of Rwanda. You know, most of them will tell you, oh, I wish, you know, I was going back to Rwanda. Rwanda, you have things happening. And in a way, when you look at how Rwanda packages Rwanda Day, you don't see them trying to reach out to whoever appreciates the brand Rwanda. And I think there's a lot of potential
so we
there.
need to also widen the scope to involve other African brothers and sisters to Rwanda Day.
Yeah.
I know it's there. I know there's Howard Dewe from, I think, Senegal or Mali. I know there are a couple, but I like how you say there should be a deliberate emphasis. I want us to just go to knowing a bit more of what you do.
Okay.
As we, go around this discussion. And Muhire, can you tell us more about, you moved here 4 years ago. What did you come to do? What are you doing? What is passionate about it? And how do you, does it validate your move back home?
Sure. Actually, when I came back, I had no business idea or, let's say, even a job offer on the table. What I saw struck me so hard that I knew some opportunity will absolutely emerge from that environment. When you have an environment that is so predictable, there's no corruption. So that's fine.
Did you say no corruption?
I've never experienced any corruption up to now. Have you?
Minimum.
Well, let's say minimum. But me, I have never, ever. I've never given any, and I've never been asked any corruption.
So there's no corruption in your environment?
In your space.
Absolutely. Now, secondly, when you look the way this country is changing, every 6 months, new road, new buildings. You may say it's not that aggressive in terms of competitivity, but it is actually. It's a very harsh environment that if you are not sharp, you won't survive at all. How many shows on TV we know that now are gone? How many startups, 4 years out, totally disappeared?
New startup. What happened?
Sold. Absolutely, I will tell you. So what happened? So I came. I came to start a fintech company, which was tapping in remittances, because my challenge also was to help some of my cousins here. I was sending money for them to go to school, and then they'll buy phones or they'll buy beer because they're young, like other kids. So I said, how can we connect the diaspora directly with the local market? So I made a platform from which you could pay electricity, water, just from Canada, with your smartphone, and instantly it was delivered to your family here. Now, it's a good actually we bring that on the table, because when I started that, there were no actually law regulating fintech company in Rwanda. That's 4 years ago. I went to Central Bank, they were like, well, we don't have anything about you. There were no what we call today sandbox, where you could test your stuff, and then if it's fine, then Rura and others will regulate you. 4 years later, we have sandbox on most of the institutions, RISA, Rura, Central Bank. Now fintech can emerge. So then, of course, I tried for 3 years. And then the market wasn't that mature. We know the level of also the capacity to build such complex technologies wasn't there. Today, I think we are ready, but 4 years ago, it wasn't the case. Then, of course, I decided to sell to someone else who could have a much better market, which is Ghana, actually. And then I was about actually to go in the media to compete you, but I got appointed.
There's still time for that.
No, you're lucky, because I got appointed as CEO of Rwanda Cooperation Initiative, which is a government, private company owned by the government, because now government also can do business, with the mission to facilitate the sharing of principle behind homegrown solutions. We are not selling what we've achieved. We are actually sharing the principle behind via or through a cost recovery mechanism. Because we used to receive a lot of delegation from countries, brother country wants to learn about Umuganda, Gachacha, and others, homegrown solutions. And it was the government of Rwanda who was sponsoring those study visits. But today people pay to come and learn, if I can say, about Gachacha and Umuganda. But meanwhile, also, before I got appointed as a CEO of RCI, actually I say every year I get appointed every year.
That's great.
You're not like...
Yeah, so 97, 2007 I was appointed, 17, sorry, I was appointed as also commissioner in the National Unity Reconciliation Commission, which I enjoyed the job. It's not a job actually, because you don't get paid. But you get to tour the whole country, really meet the real people. The people without any...
Ordinary.
Yeah, exactly, ordinary people. Yeah. And on top of that, also I'm part of some board of directors of RISA, and many other things. So as you can see, I'm very busy. And because I believe this is the right moment to definitely tap into many things. It's such an environment that is so stable. You can even look to Europe, to America. It's becoming really like a miracle on earth, absolutely, where you can predict how things may go 4 or 5 years from now. So yeah, that's what I do.
Yes. A dying question.
Yeah.
Not really, but just to say that there are many young Rwandans from the diaspora who have come back home, like him, and they are, they've gone for it, and almost every year, and which is a bit different from other countries, because. And I think we take it for granted in Rwanda that we have young people in positions of leadership, In other countries, they're still struggling with that. So even when their young, diaspora comes back home, people will be looking at them and saying, what can you do? What do you know? I've been doing this job for the last 40 years or 30 years or so. So, what he's speaking to speaks to the kind of leadership, that appreciates and is very deliberate about youth involvement, which I think is also something that has to be emphasized in terms of attracting skills and investment.
Absolutely. I think if you allow me to comment on attracting skills, most of the time diaspora is seen as a source of revenue, remittances. But actually, I see diaspora as a source of highly skilled people. For me, they are what we call in French éclaireurs. They are there, they have seen, they have experienced, and they should actually come back, and not only will be easy for them, but also in a such environment where we are given a chance to share what we've learned elsewhere. That's how Vietnam became what it is today. That's how China became what it is today. I remember in the 90s when I was in Canada, Chinese were like taking pictures of everything, and we used to laugh at them. Today it's no longer a joke because now we understand what it's done.
You go there and take pictures.
Exactly. So now I think the government of Rwanda have availed a conducive environment. It's actually now diaspora who should realize that it's their time to come and experience some stuff, because 5 years from now, when I think will be sold out. I mean, this country is open to everyone from the world. So if you don't come today, this guy will be a billionaire in real estate, and then he'll be sold out.
Maybe they don't have to come. They don't have to come. Pointing to what you're saying.
Before you win, Nyansha is someone who can talk and talk and talk. I feel like we're doing an injustice.
So
I want to ask, I may lose my point. Because, I may lose my point. It's a bit, I want to throw a bit of a spanner in the works, because Louis Antoine mentioned something extremely important, how he tried to run a company for 3 years, it didn't work, he gave up on it.
Absolutely.
And I think this is a case of probably us overselling ourselves, and it works against us sometimes. We do not have the luxury of time in this particular forum to talk about the returning diaspora who have been disillusioned.
Yeah, but we'll touch on it, please.
Yes,
Keep it.
If Louis Antoine had not gotten the political appointment, he probably would have packed his bags and gone back to becoming.
I don't think so.
Yes.
Because there's a difference between those people. There's a people between those people, and then there are people like Louis who are just dead set on just getting anything and applying themselves.
Yeah, but I made my point, Diana. My point was that we're probably overselling ourselves, and that's yes. But
because meanwhile, actually, I had started a media company.
Yes.
So while I was phasing out
entrepreneur. He was looking for somewhere,
Probably you can Google a book called Starting from the Bush.
Yes.
So and I was going toward a very aggressive media company. Just got lucky, but I'll be here to stay.
We're going to talk about disillusionment, and people were disappointed. But Nyansha, please tell us also briefly. I feel like this side has hogged. Has hogged Nyansha's time. So briefly, yes, what is it that inspires you to do what you're doing between Sweden and Kigali? Tell us more about Little Hills.
Well, Little Hills started out as just being a knowledge sharing program, because my husband is a physician in Stockholm, and when he was going through his training, he would tell me that there's a lot of doctors who want to work, but they can't work because they had to retire. And they retire really early at 65. And so I was like, you guys have a problem of not wanting your most experienced doctors to work, and my country has a problem of not having specialized doctors. And so I was like, maybe they should just go to Rwanda. Rwanda is a beautiful place. And so I was like, can I meet some of those doctors? And so I did. And once I met them, I explained, I talked about Rwanda, and most of them actually knew about Rwanda, so that was a really good thing. And they were like, oh, we would love to go visit and see. So before we decided to do it, I asked him for 2 months. I said, I want to go back home. I have had babies in between, so I was like, I want to learn and see if this is possible. And when I came, I traveled around the whole country. I went to all the hospitals. And I realized that I was trying to bring the most specialized doctors to a place where we don't have the infrastructure for them to transfer or to share their knowledge. And of course, being a country of children, I was also shocked that we don't have a children's hospital. I was actually appalled by the fact that I think 60-something% of our country is under 14, and we have no dedicated specialized children. Beyond that, around the region, I think all the 8 countries around us, there is not a specialized children's hospital. So we are a continent of children with not children's hospital, meaning we're also not doing research, all the things that goes along. But then to top it off, this, a lot of our friends, we've known each other for a very long time, they were starting to give birth. I started a little bit earlier, but and you could see that some who had kids here had some complaints, and most chose to leave, which I absolutely agree with them, because if you have a neonatal case and you can actually afford, if you have a high-risk pregnancy, I would also advise for, even I myself. And so I was like, well, we can't just continue to live like this. It felt like we've done a fantastic job in our country when it comes to our basic health care. But we have nothing on top. So I went back and I told my husband.
After 2 months?
Actually he came. I didn't go back. He came that December, and I told him, and I said, it's good that we want to do the knowledge sharing, but I think we should do a children's hospital. I know nothing about healthcare, just so you know. I'm a mother, so I was like, so it was just like, we should just have a hospital, not knowing that a hospital costs a lot of money. And so that's how we actually started Little Hills. It was more on a knowledge sharing, which is what we are focusing on right now. We have this pool of doctors who are working with the from Sweden, but they're not coming here. So we've had them come and visit, and they've met the other doctors. And now they themselves are coming up with what to do. And we are just here to kind of support them. And on top of that, we are doing a feasibility study to see, can we actually have this children's hospital, which I think we are actually going to have it. So,
how long has this period taken? Of the idea to the execution of what's happening on the ground right now?
So it took longer than because so the biggest problem, he was very lucky, and I guess, and he lives here, and it's really difficult. I have to tell you guys that I know the system because I come a lot, and maybe I have a few friends who I can ask questions. But if I'm here and I have 2 weeks, only 2 weeks, because I have left my family, my kids, to get something done. It's very difficult, and that's why I'm glad you said that, because sometimes we do sell a dream. Because I come and I want to get certain things done. We are doing a really good job on the top leadership. Our top leadership is doing a fantastic. But there is also, we have to go to the Umurenje and all of the other things. And as diaspora, I speak Rwanda very well. You can see that as soon as you step there, they know you're diaspora, and they know.
You're too quick. You want things.
Well, but I have to catch my plane. I don't have 2-3 days in Guzagaruke. Oh, sorry, come back tomorrow. You know what I mean? This thing of coming back tomorrow, you don't have time. And so I think you know, I had that dream of, I'm going to come, I'm going to present this to my country, and everyone is going to love this idea, and then, you know, boom. And actually, there's something very special about the show today, because that woman over there changed my whole...
Bernard.
Oh, wow.
She did.
She's shy. Tell us
You
briefly how she did.
so
How did
I
Bernard
was,
change
she
your
did, because I was here on, you know, just still kind of trying to get things going, and I saw her at a coffee shop. At the time, it used to be Admin's coffee shop.
Chocolat.
Chocolat.
Yes.
And I recognized her from the show because I watched the show, and I said, oh, you know, I watch you on the show. And I was like, I like the fact that you're a woman, you know, you're always pushing for the women's issue. And then she's like, oh, what are you doing here? You know, so she was very nice, and then she asked, what are you doing? And she actually sat and listened to me. And then she's like, oh, that's a fantastic idea. And she's like, how can I help you? Wow. That is something that we don't get to hear as diaspora, because I think people think you are, because you are Rwandese, you know. No, if you're diaspora, you don't know. You're just as ignorant as most white people who come here. So I think we need to rethink about how, if I have an idea of what I can do, how do we help that person? Especially for me, in the little time that I have to be able to be productive. But I've been here, you know this, I've been here I don't know how many times. And at the time, I was paying my own plane ticket, you know. So if I wasn't lucky enough to be able to afford this thing, I won't lie, I won't be able to do it. Yeah. So so you were right.
That's incredible. I want us to go. This is a topic where the minutes are just flying. I don't know where they're going. I want us to touch on reconciliation issues in the diaspora. You know, and this is something very crucial. I've discussed this with you, Muhire. And so we know Rwanda Day 2019 is scheduled to take place in Bonn, in Germany, on 24th August. You're going to be there, a century, which is great. And Rwanda Day is meant to bring Rwandans together to seek solutions in just developing this country between Rwandans in diaspora and Rwandans here. But there is an issue, especially with young people, who unfortunately, because of their surroundings or their families or, you know, parents, their environments that still carry forward genocide ideology. And I want you to share some of your experiences. I know there are places where you go and you're told not to go here, not to go there. And I mean, in 2019, this is happening. And it's kind of like a ticking time bomb if we don't really look at this issue. And I don't know, it's not enough. There's Rwanda Day, which is great. There's Come See, come and see, like you were saying, Charlie. But the reconciliation issue with the young people who've never stepped foot in this country but are propagating genocide ideology, how do we begin to tackle it? And in your capacity as a National Unity and Reconciliation Commissioner, can you just shed some insights on this?
Sure, but the first thing I have to say is not that bad, because social media sometimes tend to exaggerate things. For example, if you look to Belgium, because Belgium is one of the hot cake in terms of...
the hotbed.
Well, yes.
Hotbed of ideology.
Basically, we have like 4 or 5 people there. So loud on Twitter. And actually, there's one group of individuals, they are siblings. One is the older, the other is the little brother. And they are there shouting too much and saying whatever they want, just to seek attention. However, I went to Belgium also in 2017. And I just won one of my last... big startup prize in Switzerland.
Charles, are you listening? He's dead set when I give up on...
In 2017, then I was like, okay, let me go enjoy my hard work. And I want to, at the same time, also experience if really some way people won't serve me because you may not like my face. And that's politically said. And definitely it's a reality. We went in some bar and people won't serve me because they didn't like my face. And by coincidence, one of the ladies who worked there, we went to the same school at Apapere here back in the 90s. And then she recognized me. All of a sudden, she started finally talking to me and then serving us beer. And they realized actually I had more money. I was actually the most, the more money everybody drinks. So what I did, because I don't drink too much, I just get the Heineken's. And then I started paying beer for everyone there. Once they were drunk, I started telling them, guys, you are about to leave me, to let me go with such money just because you didn't like my face. How stupid is that? So that said, the reality is in Rwanda, people, because they are, I don't want to say they are forced to live together, but the reality is we have to live together. So, and the government never give up on inviting people to reconcile. You can see as early as in 98, they took away the death penalty, so people can start to confess and actually also somehow not require, but encourage survivor to also to forgive. But in the diaspora, people left with scars. Either you were a survivor or you were part of a family that participated in the genocide. And everybody went there, everybody's busy in his own corner. And in order to keep the memory alive, sometimes you don't heal. You just want to stay in that pain, no matter how it is. And because the diaspora is everywhere, it's become a big issue, absolutely. If let's say, if 1 million of Rwandans are living with these scars, and you know today the trauma is contagious. We've seen young kids today who are collapsing when we are commemorating the genocide against the Tutsi in '94, and yet they are barely 15 years old. And it's the same also for the kids descended from people who their parents committed the genocide. They want to defend their father. And that guiltiness sometimes push them to react as crazy as we've seen on social media. So now what's the new strategy for the government in collaboration with CNLG, NURC, and other people working around the unity reconciliation is actually, you've seen we're opening embassies like it was free. Every day we have 10, 15 people being appointed as, who knows, maybe the next time. So now embassies are required to be more dynamic. They used to be a passive and then you wait, people come to them. Now MINAFED has instructed them to actually even reach out to people who are against the government. Go to their event, listen to them, invite them, and it's working somehow. So the Rwanda Day, it's one good example. But now today also a small event, people are going there, and believe me, a lot of people are coming and are discovering their country. So the few people that are very noisy, the groupuscule of, if you count them, they're not even more than 10. And we are going to have that forever, because even for the Jewish case, we still have people, you can see in the United States, people have never even been to Germany today defending Hitler. And they are maybe 18, 15 years. I think last week we got 31 people killed in a weekend in a case of racism and hate crime. So what we have to do is each of us has to be this preacher of reconciliation. Without that, nothing's possible. At 12 years old, I've seen what segregation can do to a country. And today I'm seeing what unity can do to a country. So don't wait me as a commissioner. You guys also have to go and preach, say, guys, I've seen some people when they leave Rwanda and they arrive in Europe, they also behave the way others are behaving. And then they come back again, they become Rwandans. I'm not going to mention a pastor, but there's a pastor.
That's a very good one.
Yeah, I'm not going to mention pastor, but there's a pastor who went to Burundi. Those who follow the news will know who he is. And he went there, he started making jokes on ethnics. And then when he comes back to Rwanda, no, there's no ethnics. But I'm like,
who are you?
What's up? When out of Rwanda, you become, I don't know. And then when I met with him, he explained me that, listen, I was in Burundi. I had to,
when in Rome.
Exactly. So you understand that kind of change is not going to help us, but it's not that bad. We have to keep fighting that, but it's just a group of small people, and for me, with no big deal to keep me awake at night.
Nyanja, would you like to weigh in on this?
Well, I guess for me, because you talked about youth, I will focus only on youth in diaspora. Because I went as a young kid, but now there's even younger kids who don't even know Rwanda. Yep. And they are foreigners, you guys. They don't know Rwanda. And they're actually very, very smart kids. And they have grown up in more diverse areas, so they know better. And I think maybe for me, I would have to rethink about how, just like, race, if you grow up hearing hatred when it comes to homophobia, racism, this is how I think, then you become that. But there's a certain time when you grow up and you start questioning your parents. I'm like, why? I see other people enjoying. Look at Nyanja, she's in Rwanda, not only is she going out, she's doing things, she's becoming productive. So these kids, they know. And I think
they observe.
They observe. And we know that young people don't like to be lectured. I would have to disagree because I live in diaspora. And I think they don't even show up for our events. I'll tell you, at least in Sweden, they don't, you know, they're too busy. Okay, just like we were. You know, we've been busy with our friends. I think you remember when we were in our 20s. We were busy with our friends. And I think actually we should make them busy with their age mates, not to round them up and have them be preached to people who are the elders, because we're still doing that a lot in the diaspora. They need to meet people who are their age mates. They need to talk about things that they are all concerned about, because they're concerned about more than what their parents are. I actually truly believe that for the youth, there is those other ones, and I think, I mean, I won't even worry about them. For me, I'm worried about those young people who are in their 20s, 21, who, you know what I mean, who are brilliant, and they know that their parents are wrong. They would even probably tell you, because we all get to that point, right, of where you're like, your parents say something to you. I have a son who's almost a teenager, and he looks at me, and he, you know what I mean? And it's he questions what I am saying. And so maybe we need to rethink about how
we engage with them.
Yeah, and actually maybe let them engage with their age mates.
But I know there was a statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation where the embassies, they now want to give them a mandate to have like deliberate youth councils.
Absolutely.
This was last week. So I think you know, policymakers actually understanding and listening to this.
And get them excited. And, you know, it's not just about talking about, you know, they want to have fun. I mean, you just have to remember, what were we doing when we were 21, when we were 22? What are they doing here? Just look at the ones that are here. What are they doing? That's what they want to do, and then engage them. And as you know, once you become friends with people, you know what I mean? And another big thing that I like that we are starting to do, invite them. But when they get here, treat them like visitors, because they don't know Rwanda.
They really don't.
No,
we shouldn't assume.
You know, no, I just brought 2 visitors here for Little Hills, and I have taken them, I have introduced them to my country, you know? And that's what we're supposed to do. We have to be able to introduce them to the country.
To introduce Rwandans in the diaspora back to Rwanda.
Yeah, because I think people are always like, oh, they're Rwandese. I'm like, no, they're not Rwandese. My kids, if I didn't bring them back, if I'm not I actually force them to learn the language, they'll probably tell you I'm a Swede, you know, so they are not, you know, so we have to treat them as, but they're curious. You know, they're at the age of where they want to know their heritage. And so I think, especially for the youth, so I'm only talking now for the younger generation. The one that was born there, the ones that, you know, I mean, I haven't heard about this so much, but you hear little things, but they are just young people who probably are as curious as we were about our country, and they are looking at the internet, they are seeing all the
social media,
all the fun things, and you know, and so
and
and the Burna Boy is here, you know, they are watching, and they know, and they want to be a part of that. And so
I just want to go, before we go to a social media, we have less than 10 minutes left, but Charles, you wanted to tap on disillusionment.
Oh yes, I think the really...
Are you going to throw in also a sense of entitlement? Because that's also there. That's why some people are disillusioned.
that too, probably. But I think there is not one single point that you can say that that particular business that was started up by somebody in Norway went wrong because of one particular reason. And that's why we need to have a holistic approach. The beautiful lady in yellow talks about treating people like they are guests. I think about 4 years ago, or 5 years, I stand to be corrected, there was a party that was going on somewhere, and the police broke into this party and got all the kids, took them away, and locked them up. Right? And it was a diaspora-dominated party. So after their release, what did they go back home thinking? And that's a point that you really raise. Let's, like now, it's summer holiday.
Yeah.
Can you imagine all the parties that are going on? I can't go out today or during this season as freely as I would like to, because it's a bit of a board for my age. But again, there's a bit more tolerance today. But last weekend, there was a silent disco party that was locked up, that was closed down.
A silent disco?
Yes, a silent disco.
I mean...
And I am sure there were a lot of diaspora there. What message did they take back home?
Yeah.
And we can give a few examples. So maybe, is it that we want the diaspora to remember that we are a very strict society and therefore you're not allowed to have a good time as much as you'd like to? So I think that there's a bit of a disillusionment on that part. But I want to also give an example, Diana, about people whom we go out there. And Louis Antoine talked about shopping for skills.
Yeah.
People whom we go out there and we have oversold this Rwandan story. And we come bring them from a fantastic research institute that he's been running or heading or working for. We come throw him in the deep ocean where there are sharks. Do you remember the story she said of the top leadership being very good, but the middle level being not so efficient? And then they just fail to perform because they are working with normal human beings who do not understand that we are a country on the move and they are used to moving. Before you realize, they are being labeled failures. They are demoted. Unfortunately, some of them end up in jail. A few years later, they go back to where they were.
And that's it.
And that's it.
And very briefly,
Yes.
just to emphasize the fact that we have so much going on formally in terms of mobilizing the diaspora. But I think the things you talk about, silent disco, the social environment, we need more of that, because that's how you get people out of their comfort zone. If you create the spaces where, like now it's summertime, when they come here, there's maybe a festival where, young people just go and meet and have fun. There's not so much,
I think it's emerging.
Yes,
The private sector, the young private sector, young-led private sector entrepreneurs, they're actually at the forefront of this. And I think they get it.
There's that, and also in terms of planning, we're just talking about this. Rwanda Day was announced officially, at least, just
a few days ago.
A few days ago.
Not even a week ago, yes.
And you can imagine, people in the diaspora are very keen about their calendar. I mean, there are people who've been planning about coming to Rwanda, like next year, December, So if you're coming up with a calendar for diaspora, I think you have to bear in mind that these are people who have schedules, who have to plan in advance, save money, and so you can't just announce, Rwanda Day is, in 2 weeks or
switch
or
on, off button.
Yes, and lastly, very lastly, in terms of ethics, talking about professionals who come back, one of the biggest challenges I think they face is when they get to the workplace, the structures sometimes are lacking.
Middle level.
Yes, middle level. And these people don't know what to do, because then they have to, instead of doing their work, spend a lot of time fixing, creating structures. And by the time they're like, you've been here for 2 years. What have you been doing?
What did we bring you
Yes,
for?
I'll have to stop you. I'd like us to go to our Twitter feed. We have very few minutes left, but we've had some people tweeting. And our first tweet is from Ahmad Kajangwe. And his tweet says that, very interesting topic on the first issue, crowdsourcing and open collaboration platforms could be one way for those in the diaspora to contribute back home without having to be physically back home. Check out rebrain.africa. So I think that's quite interesting, talking about partnerships, not necessarily having to physically be here. We also have another tweet, and this tweet, if I can see, I think we'll come back to the Twitter feed later. We'll come back to it later. But also in the interest of time, you had something very quick that you wanted to say.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Allow me to disagree with the privilege that should be given to the diaspora. Because if you start giving some people some privilege, VIP lines to get their paper because they have to catch up to your plane, then you're starting creating another level of people. And then I've seen diaspora abusing that. I remember when I used to come and line up, and people find out later when I was in diaspora, they're like, wow, why don't you do like others? Try to make too much noise about things faster. This country came from somewhere. Diaspora should see themselves not as privileged people, but as people who should help this country to move to another level. So I totally disagree. Anytime a diaspora comes to my office and want to apply for a job and want a VIP treatment, I'm like, I'm sorry. You have to...
I like that, because this is the sense of entitlement I was talking about. We have one last tweet for today. And this tweet is from Romeo, and Romeo says that, talking about diaspora, Romeo says that the Square, we have failed to develop education standards because almost everyone, including public officials, takes their kids abroad for studies. And health, by the way. Now, you can't hire a local graduate who struggles to either speak English or French fluently, hence failing our youth and future generation. I think we need part 2 of this discussion. I feel like I've failed to manage this panel today. Everyone is very opinionated, very passionate about this topic. Brenna and Charlie, if you can just give a chance to our guests to give their closing remarks. Nyanja, I'll start with you. The role of diaspora in developing Rwanda. Very briefly.
I think it has to be, we need to start recruiting knowledge. Merit-based, I think we need to, because we're lacking a lot of knowledge, and we have a lot of knowledge. And let's just not just say diaspora, like you say, Rwanda. I love the fact that we are a country that allows everyone to come. Let's just ask everyone who has knowledge to come and contribute to the growth of our country. I mean, we are a global world, and so I think we're in the right path, though. I mean, like I say, we're already on the move, and we just need to, I think, for me, as my generation, we just need to continue with this energy that we've had, because I feel like there was this energy and now it's kind of, and so, we need to, we do, and I absolutely disagree with them, because if I have to catch a plane and all I needed was one signature, and I have to go back to Sweden and come back to Sweden for one signature, why would I want to come invest in Rwanda?
This is part 2. This is part 2.
I just wanted to say, it has nothing to do with
entitlement and humility.
No. Absolutely.
Less than 30 seconds.
We are living an unprecedented moment. It's the first time in the history of this country, 25s without war, without segregation. So we are becoming slowly, surely a very stable society. Then the table is set for a sophisticated economy. I'm sure diaspora should come, and together we may agree, disagree, but it's unprecedented what we are living today. Let's take advantage of this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Louis Antoine Muhire. Thank you very much,
so
Nyanja. It's been a pleasure having you back and having you on the Square after many times of planning this. Charlie, always a pleasure to have you on the Square. Berna, always a pleasure. Welcome back from your brief hiatus. And to our guests watching, thank you for tuning in. Carry the conversation forward using #TheSquareRW. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's The Square Rwanda. Subscribe on our channel to catch up with episodes. And I'd like to thank our partners, Uzi Collections and Bourbon Coffee. Thank you for constantly supporting us. Have a good night.